To come together, and we thought that since we are going to do this preview, we'll have our points of view, but also from Bayern's. And so we decided to reach out to one of the most prominent accounts on Twitter, whom you all know, or X, whom you all know is a prominent Bayern fan. So welcome Augustus, whose real name is Saad. You can see him down there. So he will obviously talk about Bayern and how he feels about them and their the points of view that we want from them. Dom will obviously be the resident Barca expert. I will add in my bits. We'll go through the same process where we are going to talk about formations. We are going to talk about stats. We're going to talk about data analysis and so on and so forth. So in the first part, when we are doing an analysis, we'll possibly not be able to take questions. So we'll go through that, and then we'll open it up, and then we'll have a just the way we always have in our shows. We'll talk to each other. We'll take your questions. We'll try to give our answers. You can counter us. All good. And with that, Dom and Saad, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'll let Augustus go first, because people know me. You know who I am. You know what we do here. But we do have a huge guest today. And Augustus, thank you so much for joining. This is a huge thing for us as a channel, but also just having you as a friend here means the world to us. So thank you. And I'll give you the spotlight a couple of minutes just to say up something about yourself and just about your account and stuff like that.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for the invitation. I mean, it's really great to be here with you guys. I've been watching some of your content. I've seen the one about Flick, so it was really interesting to be here as well. And yeah, for me, I'm just a Bayern fan for a long time now, and quite interested in everything that's tactical. I really love to analyze games, to analyze coaches, their approach, especially the build up, the pressing. It's really the things that I really love. I feel like it's a bit like a chess game. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Talk about two coaches that I kind of like. I love Hansi Flick. I think he's quite known, and company is someone I'm trying to, understand. And so far, I really like his approach. So yeah, thank you for the invitation, and it's really great to be here with you guys and friends, of course.
All right, so let's get started. We'll cut back into a little bit of history. And if you look at that history, it doesn't make pretty reading for Barca fans out there. In the Champions League, right? It's pretty much one-sided. Let's just be honest, right? I love Barca. I've been loving Barca for 25, 30 years, but it is what it is. 13 matches played, 2-1, 10 lost, 1 draw, goals scored 13, 33 conceded. That makes dire reading. For whatever reason, Barca haven't had the best of Bayern in Champions League matches. There have been officially with the Guardiola era when we won, and then it was that Luis Enrique era when we won. But apart from that, there have been some pretty heavy defeats, let's say. It's also true that this era has coincided with some of the weakest Barcelona sides that have been there in the last 10, 15 years. So that's there. But excuses, you can't really give excuses. The thing is, it has been grim reading when we think about just stats. And on stats alone, if you are a bookmaker and you're going to this game, you will say your money's on Bayern, right? But that's not how football works out. So we'll also take a look at the current day, the current squad, and so on and so forth. But this is just to set up context on what this rivalry has meant for some time. Now, if we go into a couple of other things, and this is where we start looking into this season, right? So we have just taken into account, and it's a relatively short season, so we haven't played a lot of games, but you can see the colors and you can see the radar chart. Very similar teams with Hans Flick, obviously of Bayern fame. Company is new, but he's known for his way of, we saw that in Burnley as well. So looks like he's continuing down that path. The only place where Bayern possibly, muscle it out is in the physicality, which has always been a problem for Barca. But guys, any thoughts from both of you on this radar chart?
Yeah, I'll let him. Augustus, you go first, and I'll go second, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really agree with the fact that physicality always been a problem for Barca. I think it just the DNA of Barca, like it's never been that physical team, and whether you were physical or not, you were always very strong. So I think Barca's DNA is just a bit different. On Bayern's side, we really like to be physical. I think it's just the German mentality, to be like really strong, quite complete all over the pitch, man to man. So I think that Bayern's approach changed a lot. Since company took over, we've seen a team that's pressing high, that plays with a lot of intensity, that goes man to man all over the pitch. With Tuchel, I really thought, okay, maybe we don't have the striker for that type of approach, because I thought like Kane is not someone who's quite fast, who's someone who likes to press all the time. But we've seen changes, and I really like the way, like company went about implementing that press. So far we've seen a team that's quite complete, that's really strong, that dominates. And despite the fact that there are some weaknesses and obviously some problems with defending, especially long balls, I think that we've seen a lot of problems lately with that. But yeah, I think it's very similar. It reminds me a little bit of Hansi Flick's time at Bayern, so we see a lot of that. I think the most important part here is that we're better at possession. I thought like you would be a little bit better. I think you play with three midfielders, etc. But yeah, I think overall, very very similar teams. The fact that your pressing is better is also something that shocks me a little bit. But yeah, I expect the same. I mean, expect that from Hansi Flick. So yeah, quite interesting to look at this, and yeah, let's see how it goes during the game. But I leave it to you, my friend, to say your part.
It's quite interesting. Yeah, I mean, the teams being similar is what strikes me the most, because that was, when I was researching Bayern, that's what you immediately you see, that the similarities between the two teams, how they play, how they set up, even the profiles they have kind of mimic each other sometimes. And the physicality part, I do agree. Yeah, Barca has never been a big physical side, but now under Hansi Flick, we see all the reports of players actually working a lot on their physicality, working all of their fitness, and just being able to be more machines, right? So that's kind of something that they are working on. But as I said, it's not necessarily the part that makes Barca who they are, right? So this is to be expected. And then, of course, the numbers in pressing and possession, it can fluctuate. But yeah, the bottom line is these teams are very similar, very complete at the moment. There's a team that don't just win games, they just destroy teams at the moment. And just seeing them go face to face, that'll be a big game, at least on paper, right? It might go either way. It might be a very high octane match, which is what we expect. But then again, maybe teams will be much more strategical going into it, because it's not a regular league game that you're playing. It's a huge Champions League clash. So we'll see how they adapt to each other. But yeah, on the face of it, very similar. Very they have similar ideas. They draw for similar sources. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, let's see what else we have, Dev. Oh, you're muted, Dev. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So these are, scatter diagrams we all love, and this is basically I've just taken XG and goals created as the two variables. And the thing that I wanted to say, in both the leagues, these are the teams that lead the pack by a wide margin. So on the left, you can see Bayern really ahead of that second dot on that's Bayern Leverkusen. That's far away, right? And same thing for Barca. The second dot that's on the top is a little bit higher. As you can see, that's Real Madrid. But apart from that, these are the two teams that are literally pressing the accelerator, or so as to say, on XG created and goals created per 90. So both teams are going to attack. That's for sure. They have an attacking DNA. They have an attacking mentality. The coaches come from that school of thought. So there's no question about that. This is going to be a high stakes game with a lot of attacking firepower and that intent to go for the kill pretty early. Now, we like to the next slide, where I wanted to just check into possession and PPDA, more as to say. And here also very similar, right? But I was also surprised that our pressing under Hansi Flick is different. It's kind of zonal, but it's slightly better league averages. That's all I'm saying. Doesn't mean anything, but very similar teams, as you can say, in their makeup and in their look and how they approach the game. Any thoughts, gentlemen, before I pass you back for formations and so on?
No, it's just the same thing as you said. These teams like to press, and they like to be very aggressive, very dominant in possession as well. So it's kind of, they will pin you back down, they will suffocate you, they want to have the ball, they want to keep attacking and pinning you down and sustain that pressure. And it's all about that, right? It's all about dominance. And these teams on paper are so aggressive and so similar in the way they want to play you off the pitch. It makes me so excited about the game, but it's always that danger, because can you really outscore a Bayern if you go into that kind of a game? It's a very risky approach for Barca. But they have been very open in their approach, and so have Bayern, to be honest. So it's a kind of a clash of teams that want to do the same thing, and they have the same weaknesses as well in some regards. So it'll be interesting to see. Augustus, your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. I was listening to Unai Emery talk about the game against Bayern, and one thing that was really interesting is that he said, for me, this game for the wingers, it was all about defending. Like he knew that Bayern would pin him down. See, these two teams, you can't really go attacking against them because you're gonna get punished. So now that we're seeing two very similar styles, I think at the same level at this point, because Bayern's also getting used to this play style. Barca the same thing. Bayern was not playing like this last year, so we see two teams that are adapting to a new play style, and this would probably create a lot of goal scoring chances to both sides. I think it would be quite an interesting game to watch, and I think it would be quite close. Like I don't really see any team taking over the whole game like we used to see in the past few years. I think it would be quite close. So like 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, and I think it will be about who can make the best of that momentum. So yeah, it's a very interesting game. I'm also quite interested to see who will change or try to adapt the most his approach, because I think one of the two coaches will try to bring something new to this game. So yeah, that would be quite interesting to see for sure.
That is amazing, guys. And that brings us to the point where I'll pass it on to you, gentlemen, to take us through some formations. Kicking off with Dom, who will take us through what he feels Hansi Flick is going to set up us against. And then Augustus will take us through what he feels company is going to do. And then we'll have some debates on whether that's right or wrong. To guys who are on the chat, since these gentlemen will be on board doing fancy stuff, I'll try to respond to some of you on the chat itself. And then we'll take some questions. With that, over to you, Dom.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen and see if that works. Okay. You'll let me know when you actually see this. Can you see it? I can't hear you, Dev.
No, we can't.
You can't see it.
Hold on.
Yeah, you have to. It's on the left now, Dev. If you can swap to that window.
Yeah, I'm trying. But
that'll be.
That is okay. Can you see me, guys?
Yeah, we can see you, but not my board.
Okay, hold on.
It says it's sharing and it's on the left, but it's black and white, so it's kind of not in the live yet.
Hold on.
Yeah, it is awkward. Yeah.
Okay.
This used to work for us, but now it's not working for some reason. Okay, I'll stop the share and try again.
Yeah, just
let's try again. Okay, so
it happens.
Right, is Dev? Oh, there it is.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
Okay,
so Dev,
try it again. Dom.
I'm sharing the screen, but it's on the left. I think you have to allow it to, or something. You have to. You see it on the left.
No, I cannot. I honestly can't see it. Hold on.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. These things happen, guys. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Can you see it now? The board and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, now so we can finally start. Now, obviously, I do have sort of the classic formations. This is obviously not the final product. This could change, and I've put some players on the left that might feature that I don't have in the starting lineup. So I'll start with Barca, and obviously Augustus can correct me on the Bayern players. But for Barca, this is what you will probably see. And both teams cannot do lineup in a 4-2-3-1. With Bayern, it's far more flexible. I mean, I've tried to pin down a formation for them, but I couldn't, because they do play a 4-2-3-1, they do play a 4-3-3, they do play a 3-2-5, 2-4-4. They're all over the place, right? Company has been very flexible with how he wants his team to play. With Barca, there's actually three positions that I do want to highlight that kind of are a question mark at the moment. Barca do play in a 4-2-3-1, which kind of morphs into a 4-3-3, or vice versa, depending on what you need on the pitch. They're also quite flexible in that sense. But no, I will start with the first one, which is Olmo. Olmo is obviously a very, very key player for Barcelona. What they do in possession, what he brings into these pockets is crucial. Now he's obviously out sidelined just now, but reports do state that he'll be back for the Sevilla game. And then if he's fully fit and if he's match sharp, I think Flick will definitely play him because Olmo is a key player. So yeah, if he's ready, he will absolutely feature, and he should feature, in my opinion. So let's see that Olmo will play there. Now the next point of interest will be Casado, obviously also a player who's been performing really well, and I've been a fan of Casado for the last 3, 4, 5 years, even when he was captaining the youth side as well. But then you do have Frankie de Jong, who could potentially slot in and play instead of Casado in this role next to Pedri. Now it all depends on Frankie's fitness. Obviously on paper, Frankie does give you a slight bump in individual quality compared to Casado, but then again, is Frankie match sharp? Is he fit to actually feature in such a high octane game? Then also there's a question of actually the synergy between the players, because Casado has been playing for a while with these players, and he knows how to link up with Pedri and Olmo, Koundé, Kubarsi, Lamine. He has that nailed down, whereas Frankie might come in and without being on the same page as these other players in a game like this, it might be a big detriment regardless of his individual quality. And then obviously you do have someone like Ferran who could come in for Olmo if Olmo is not ready, which would move Rafinha centrally, and then you would have Ferran out there. But I don't think that will happen. I think if Olmo is fit, he will play, and then Rafinha will be sort of the winger that cuts in and be this number 10/left winger hybrid. And finally, we do have Peña and Szczesny. I think Szczesny, if he's fit, again, if he's ready to feature, he will definitely feature ahead of Peña. There's no question about it. I mean, no shit on Peña. People say we do bash him a lot. Guys, we want all the best for Peña, but if you get to choose between these two players, you're obviously going for Szczesny. Now, the thing is, if this is going to be his first game for Barca, that's kind of unfair to him because, you don't have that match sharpness, you don't have the fitness nailed on, and then you start in a game like this, it could be a bit detrimental, let's just put it that way. But if he's ready, if he's mentally in the game, if he's physically in the game, I think there's no doubt in my mind that Flick will go for Szczesny ahead of Peña, and that kind of completes the Barca lineup. This is what I think we'll see. This is what I think we should see. Obviously, Frankie and Casado is the biggest question mark for now, but as of this moment, I will say this is what Barca will go for. Obviously, on the Bayern side, and Augustus can tell me a bit more, there's a couple of things that I think could happen. Obviously, you do have this double pivot. You have this right back. I don't think you have a proper right back. I mean, Guerrero can play there, and obviously you can have Leimer there as well, which kind of changes the whole dynamic, because now you have two lefties that want to occupy this space. It's kind of makes for a crowd in this half space a little bit. But then again, you could also have Kimmich in the right back spot, and then you have Paulinho here as well, which is another option to have. I'm not sure if he will feature or not, Paulinho. Maybe he will. Brings you a different dynamic here in sweeping and covering of space, obviously. And also, what we have seen from Bayern in some instances is at least actually playing as kind of advanced interior sort of thing, and then you can have Coman over here, or you can have Gnabry on the other side and Coman there. There's a lot of things you can do with this Bayern lineup. They are flexible. They are kind of all over the place with these lineup and structures. But this is kind of what I feel can or will happen. Musiala, obviously, in Kane, this is the spine that doesn't really change, and Pavlovic alongside him in the middle of the pitch, and Neuer between the sticks, who kind of does what he does in and out of possession. But this is how I see my initial predictions for the lineup and the structures. This is what I would be looking at. Any thoughts, Augustus, on both ends?
Well, for the Barca side, I totally agree. I think this is really good team to try and punish Bayern when there is space behind, because you have Olmo really good, Pedri really good at combining and playing those tight spaces, because we know that you won't have a lot of freedom because Bayern would press high, and same for Barca side. So for us as well, it would be very important to have Musiala. But I think it's really one of those games, when I've been talking about Paulinho, it's a bit kind of a problem with most of the Bayern fans, because I'm not his biggest fan, to be fully honest. But this is one of the games where you need him, and what I mean by that is that I said it before he even signed. Okay, this player won't be used as much as we would like to for the price, but there are games where you can't pin down the opposition for a long time, and in those games you need someone who can eat up space in the midfield and win those turnovers and win those duels. And this is one of those games where we know we can get punished on the counter. We can, lose ball. We probably would have a lot of periods of time where we won't have the ball because Barca is quite good in possession as well. So it's quite equal between the two sides. And this is one of those games where I kind of see him, and I would love to see him on the pitch because he's one of those players who might not be that good in possession, but he's really good against the ball. And he would win at those duels. He would be following Olmo everywhere. He would be fighting with Pedri everywhere. So he would add that physicality for Pavlovic, as well as for Kimmich. This is one of those games where, okay, he can be a little bit in behind and he would still have a lot of ball because the idea would be to use him to come in and, combine with Olise. Because the problem, as you said, is that we don't have a right back. I mean, we have two right backs that are injured. And we also have a little bit of a problem when we go against two strikers. So Barca use only Lewandowski, but he's really good, when he has like long balls. It is the type of striker that you can trust with any type of ball. He has really good first touch. He knows how to combine. He knows how to set up his teammates. And then you will have Lamine Yamal against Davis. And I will tell you one thing. Davis is really good, but one of his biggest problems is when he comes against tricky wingers. Those like dribblers who like to dribble slow, doesn't need space, doesn't need pace. These are his weaknesses. We've seen it against Bernardo Silva. We've seen it against, Real Madrid as well. He really struggles a little bit against those quite slow, tricky wingers who dribble just, standing up, like this, does the little tricks. And Lamine Yamal is really good at that. So, so you do expect Kim to support him. And that means you need Palina to be there to like also fight in aerial duels, to like also be, the person that stops every link up between Olmo, Lewandowski, Pedri, Lamine, Rafinha. I mean, just too much quality in that attack, and that you will be also playing against the ball, so you need someone like that. So for me, this should be the lineup. I'm not sure it would be like that because there were many games where I thought, okay, this would be maybe the option or the possibility for Palina to start, and he didn't start, I think, so far. So so you never know. On our side, I think one of the key players for our game would be Gnabry. Like this is a winger that a lot of people don't really expect, but he loves to play in such games. Big game player, and he thrives when there's space. He's really smart with his movements. With times, he runs really well. And when you have Musiala between the lines, I'm not sure Casado will be quite good against Musiala. I mean, you need at least two players there to like stop him because when he's set up, is really good. And when he starts, it's very hard to stop him, like in duels and any way you want. So yeah, you have Kane and Musiala combining there. You have Olise who comes in the half spaces and tries to shoot with his left foot. Like you have two inverted wingers. And I think Bayern can punish there as well. So yeah, it would be quite an interesting game from the lineup at least, but we can go more into the details later. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you speak about Bayern a bit more. I don't want to take that away from your thing. So this is what you would expect. So Paulinho next to Pavlovic and then Kimmich at the right back. Is that what you would go for, or do you think Guerrero will get a nod and then Kimmich instead of Paulinho in midfield? So what are you thinking in this sense?
I think I expect like company to adapt a little bit. I see more Palina start for sure. I think it would be Kimmich right back and Palina starting. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I was thinking as well, because it kind of creates a bit of a conundrum here. If you have two lefties and then they both kind of want to occupy the space, it kind of it takes away the depth. You need some depth here as well, potentially. Not that Kimmich gives it. The Kimmich doesn't give you really that. He also sees more of an inverted outside the block distributor kind of thing. But then we'll see how company adapts, as you say. I think for Barca, it will be in possession will be how they deal with this Bayern press. Obviously, if you do have Kane in the lineup, it's very similar to the Lewandowski thing. But Barca can't really press from the front because they have Lewandowski who can press, but it's not really optimal for him to run too much, and he doesn't want to run too much, which is fair play. And Kane is a bit of the same thing. So I've seen Bayern actually do the similar thing to Barcelona, where they will kind of drop Kane a bit deeper. Sometimes he will be on the pivots. Musiala will be next to him, and then you will have the wingers kind of press the center backs from outside. And this doesn't happen every game, and I'm sure you can correct me if I'm wrong. So you do have this kind of shape here, and then obviously the fullbacks would have to also press their respective fullbacks on the other side, to kind of stop Barcelona's distribution. And for Barca, it will be all about trying to outplay this pressure as well. But Bayern also can press with Kane up front, so he will generally, if he does press a bit higher, he will generally go on this right center back, whereas Musiala or then Olise can maybe keep this fullback in his cover shadow like this, and then Musiala can press up front, and you have sort of man to mark pressing shape in this sense, and they want to force you out wide. So if the ball does go out wide to Koundé, for example, Bayern are ready to collapse on you, and they don't give you options. They will suffocate you. They will try and play very, very close to you, and then they want to win the ball very high up the pitch, and that's how they hurt you, right? This counter pressing and pressing from Kompany has been a huge part of how he operates, how he likes to play, and I think for Barcelona it will be how can we actually outplay this press, because if we do go wide and we try to access Lamine in this areas right here where there's no space, there's no option for him to turn and actually outplay Davies. Of course he can do that. Lamine, someone who can, as you said, Augustus, he can be the tricky winger who will beat Davies from a standstill position and kind of go into the space in behind, or maybe just inside and then combine with his players out there. But for Barca, I think the big thing will be outplaying this press properly, because once Bayern do kind of attempt to they go all the way out in this pressure, right? They will go very high. They will keep a high line both on and off the ball, and there will be some space to exploit there. If Barca can kind of circulate the ball and use Chesney, use Peña, whoever it is between the sticks, as an additional man in possession, if they can outplay this press, there's always going to be space on the other side, on the weak side, on the opposite end, that can be exploited, that can be kind of used with Rafinha and the outlets. So it's very important that Barca can actually use those outlets, and they can actually hurt Bayern once they commit to that press, because they will commit. They will be very aggressive, most likely, and they will try and suffocate you out of position as well. So for me, this is where Barca need to be very, very proficient. We do have Casado and Pedri who are press resistant, but then again, against this high pressure of Bayern, because we've not seen them actually properly tested in La Liga in this regard. These players can turn their markers. They can. Pedri is very, very press resistant. Casado is as well, not the same as Pedri, obviously, but he can shake off his marker and kind of progress the ball that way and then link up. And if you use Olmo properly, who will drop a bit deeper, who will try and make this overload in this area right here, I think this is what Barca can do quite efficiently on the ball. But also what I've noticed with Bayern is kind of Kimmich and Pavlovic, what they are great at what they do. Sometimes you can use these pockets behind them, right? So you can use their blind side, you can use these areas between the lines to kind of maximize your efforts in possession, because Barca do have pocket players. They have players like Olmo, like Pedri, even Lamine will come and kind of go into this area right here, and they can play in these congested spaces really, really well. And they also have these distributors from the back, because Inigo and Kubarsi are two ball-playing center backs who can kind of access these players higher up the pitch. I'm not going to say with ease, because the Bayern press is very, very efficient, but at the same time, we do have a lefty on the left and a right footer on the right side, which kind of give you the angles for quick progression and efficient progression. And for Flick, so far, we do know this. The first phase of attack, it starts over here with these players, and it's very vertical, it's very quick, and we want to access this area on the pitch the most, so that this midfield area, we want to keep the ball here as much as possible, because all our biggest threats are actually in this area, right? And then you will have Balde, and you will have Lamine, and kind of even Koundé going forward. That's what Barca often do, and it will be all about outplaying this Bayern press, which I feel is very, very good, but at the same time depends on how you use Kane and how you kind of structure the press around Kane, because he by himself, I don't think he's a big pressing machine, nor should he be, because he does bring you a lot more in possession of the ball, obviously. So this will be kind of my point of view. The biggest thing for Barca will be outplaying the Bayern press, and then playing to your outlets, playing to Balde and Rafinha and Lamine, and using Lewandowski properly as this kind of target man of sorts. He can be a target man, obviously. You want him to be in the box as much and not increase the distance that he has to cover on the pitch. Obviously, that's what you have to do. But in a game like this where you are expecting to face a high press and counter press, you need Lewandowski to be on top of his game and to be able to receive these balls, sometimes very long balls and very high balls sometimes, and be able to control them with not with ease, but proficiently and optimally, and then set up your attack. Any thoughts from here, guys, before I do something else as well?
Well, I had one question. If we can maybe set up as you were at first, and yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the way Bayern presses, at first it was not like this. I think the company really kind of like fine tuning it as we go through. Now what we see is, for example, Olise will press the left center back. You have Musiala a little bit back, and you would have Kimmich a little bit forward.
Right.
So the right back a little bit forward. Yeah, right. So this is the way Bayern presses right now. So we leave very little space. And if you see it, maybe even Pavlovic a little bit forward as well. And yeah, exactly. So
Right.
we leave very, very little space for most of the teams. And if you see it, I mean, against Aston Villa, if you've seen it against Frankfurt, and these are the two teams that managed to hurt us, it was mainly through long balls. And Aston Villa would not even try most of the time to even play from the back. And we're talking about Unai Emery, who's really quite good at build up and then basically finding like weaknesses in teams. So most of the teams that we play against would play long balls, and I don't think like Hansi Flick would go for that. So it would be quite interesting to see how you will be able to bypass this press, because I think this would be one of the most important questions to answer for Hansi Flick.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's exactly it. Because Barca want to be on the ball, but Bayern want to take the ball away from you as quickly as possible. So, in this situation, how do Barca outplay this high intensity press? I think Chesney will be very key here. This is what Bayern do well as well, because they use Neuer's on the ball ability quite a lot, and obviously Neuer and Chesney are not on the same level when it comes to that. Chesney on the ball is decent, but we'll see how he can handle the high press and how match up he will actually be when he does come in. So for Barca, it will be very, very dangerous to actually play for these long diagonal balls. Just one pass switches to the free man, because this pass, if it's not inch perfect, you can have these players like Upamecano and Paulinho especially, who are great at covering the space, and they can actually intercept these passes, and then you are in a lot of trouble if this fails, right? So Barca will be more inclined to kind of systematically outplay the press, where they kind of go cover less distances with a single pass, or they will have to go around Bayern really quickly and then access the area that's kind of free on the other side. That would be my guess. Or maybe use these players like Pedri and Castro, who are great under pressure, and they can actually shake off their markers on their own. That's one other way. And maybe use Olmo here as sort of a player who creates the numerical advantage potentially. 3 versus 2 here. Oh, what did I do there? Right. Okay. Or maybe even use Lewandowski, but we'll see. Yeah, this is the very the big aspect of Barca actually outplaying Bayern. Can they do it? Can they outplay the press? And then if they can, there's potential to hurt them. Absolutely. What I'm also kind of afraid of is we've seen this against Monaco, where kind of teams, when they attack you, for example, if Bayern, when they attack on this side, for example, they like to create these overloads, right? They will put players on one side of the pitch, right here, for example, and they will have players from the second plan kind of coming in, right? Paulinho can be here on the edge of the box and kind of, Paulinho or Kimmich potentially being in these areas and receiving the ball somewhere around this zone 14 kind of area. And if they can pull the opposition or pull Barcelona on one side and then kind of create space on this side and access this area right here. And this is what Monaco have done to Barcelona Champions League as well. They've pulled the whole team on one side, and then they access the other side really quickly and very efficiently. And then you have all this space that you afford to the opposition. If Bayern get this space, because they are a very centrally focused team, right? They want to attack through the middle. They do have initial width with their wingers, but their wingers will come inside as well, and they will attack down the middle channel, which is something that Barca like to do as well. But if Barca are not good at tracking these players, these bodies in this area right here, it can be very, very costly against a team like Bayern. So it'll be interesting to see how Barca can handle this, how they can adapt this kind of tactic in this area of the pitch, but also just in sheer numbers that Bayern put out, because they will attack and they will put bodies in the box. They will have 5 or 6 players I've seen in the box when they do attack, when they do pin you down. So can Barca actually handle that inside their own box? They don't have much height for crosses. They don't have much aerial prowess or maybe even much physicality in that sense. So can they actually go toe-to-toe with Bayern in that regard? So that will be my kind of biggest concern when it comes to Barcelona. So imagine this zone 14 when Bayern do attack. Imagine the box in the air, especially, and imagine these tricky wingers who will be in these one situation. They will be very tricky. They will attack the space. They will attack their markers. And can Barca actually escape the Bayern press? Those will be kind of my main pointers. And then if you guys do have any more thoughts, let me know, and then we can actually swap. And
I have a couple of questions to both of you gentlemen. All right. So yes, you're right. The press will dictate the match. Now, given Barca specifically have been playing the high line pretty well, and drawing the offsides pretty well. 62 offsides. No other team has drawn more offsides than they have. And the zone 14 stuff that you were talking about, Dom, yes, it'll be hard to contend with a Musiala and a Kane and an Aubrey. It'll be very hard. And I don't think Flick is going to drop his line. No. I think he's going to keep the line that he has always kept, which means we have Inigo and Kubarsi at a fairly base of the midfield kind of a position, because that's where Flick positions, right? And then how do you think that's going to, because you and I have talked about it, that's a recipe for disaster when it doesn't work. When it does work, it's incredible, because you get 4 or 5 offsides in a match, which we have often seen. But if it doesn't, it can get pretty embarrassing pretty soon. And Barca have faced that before from Bayern. Do you think that's going to have? I just wanted to I've thought about it, but I would love to you guys, your point of view on the offside trap on both sides. But Bayern's high line is a little bit lower. They defend across the width of the pitch. We defend a lot more centrally. If you look at the data on both the teams, and we are a lot more higher up the pitch, right? We play for that offside trap, and that will be a part of the way to. But now that there's a long ball or the second ball play that is going to be there, and players will be playing off each other's shoulder, what have you. What do you think would be Flick's point of view or thinking to counter that? Or can it get
absolutely can, because you do have these outlets that Bayern have that can absolutely hurt you. And Barca, I don't think they will. The thing is, in La Liga, they can pin the opposition down fairly easily. Not easily, but they know how to do it. They will do it. With Bayern won't really want to let you do that, right? They will try and go out and play. They will press you. They won't really allow themselves to be pinned down for longer periods of time. So that, in that sense, it will be more, the game will more be played in their respective halves, right? It'll be Barca pressing Bayern and Bayern pressing Barca. Who can bypass that press better, right? But you're right. There is a big danger here with this high line, because the way the Barca press is very similar to Bayern in some sense. But Lewandowski will drop onto the pivot. Olmo will drop onto the pivot as well. And you will have this wingers pressing from outside to in. So you will have this kind of shape. Now, I think there is a potential here for Barca to actually win the ball higher up, because Upamecano and Kim, when they are pressed, there is a possibility there for mistakes. There always is. It's always a danger of playing out of the back against a very high aggressive team. And now, obviously, if Balde does press higher, you have the situation where Balde has to theoretically cover 2 players, right? He has Olise, he has Kimmich as well, and same for Kunde as well. We've seen this for Barca. They put their fullbacks into these decisional crises because they have to cover 2 players. And then if Kubarsi goes out wide to kind of help him over there, it creates a big space to exploit right here. And Kane can do it. Musiala can do it. Gnabry can actually do it as well. So there is a danger, constant danger here. And if Barca don't get the press right, it might get ugly, as you say, Dev. And this offside trap will get tested against better players. And Bayern do have much better players than we've seen in most. Yeah, then most, if not all, La Liga teams, apart from Real Madrid potentially. So we'll see how the press goes. Does Flick adapt? Because against Girona, I remember he did adapt, because he knew that Girona would try and play at the back. So he told Lewandowski, okay, now you go and press. And he was one of the players to press up high next to one winger, and the other winger kind of drop deeper and stay on the fullback, so that the access to the fullback is not as easy as it is if you press with the wingers from outside in, because this gives you easier access to the fullbacks. And Neuer is a ball playing goalkeeper, right? He will have no trouble accessing Kimmich, accessing Davis, and then Davis can obviously carry the ball forward down the whole flank and shift shift Koundé, shift Lamine if he's on top of him. So there is a high danger of that. Now, can Barca actually be proficient in stopping this? I don't know. Hopefully we can. Hopefully this high line and the offside trap do hold off. But as you say, it's a high risk, high reward kind of play. Augustus, any thoughts on that from your perspective?
Well, I think it goes for both sides. Like as you said, I've seen Bayern so far this season. I don't think our offside trap works as well as Barca's offside trap. So that's an issue for us because we really go man to man. I mean, we've seen it in the last game. It was a ball that we lost and then a counter again and again against Frankfurt. So Barca has a lot more smaller players, let's say, better players. The thing is, against these two sides that we really struggled to play against, they were pressing us with two forwards. Aston Villa and Frankfurt. We're talking about one quite fast forward who's really good physically. So, like for example, Oli Watkins, or Frankfurt had Marmoush and I think forgot the name. Etiquette, right? Something like that. I don't know.
No.
Forgot the name. So yeah, you have these two forwards that are basically on Kim and Upamecano all the time when their team is been down. So they really try to, get that one ball, that one little mistake, that one little miscalculation, and they go on the counter. And then it's really, really hard to stop them because we are defending from half the pitch. So for two players to defend all that space, it's really complicated. And that's also why I want to have Palina start this game, because I believe that, first of all, he's really good in aerial duels. So one of the Upamecano and Kim can go back a little bit and, be the sweeper role and have Neuer a little bit far closer to his goal. And also, the thing is, by having Palina go for duels against Lewandowski, we are a lot more calmer and we're quite fast, defensively. Upamecano or Davis are quite fast, so these two players can really defend long distances. And then Kim is also quite fast. It's just Kimmich who's really not the pacey player, but you have him there because of his ball playing ability. So I do believe that your offside trap is a lot better, but it's a really good question because can it hold down? And the thing is, Bayern don't really play on that. We don't really have those fast forwards that will try to gain momentum or gain that little bit of space. We have Gnabry who times his runs really well, but then Gnabry is really hard to defend anyway, I would say, when he's off the ball. But Kane is someone who likes to receive the ball at his feet. So This is how we will play. We will try to use Musiala to bypass your press. Because, for example, if you can do it, that would be really great. The way we build up is separate Upamecano and Kim. So there's a lot of space between the two center backs.
Yeah.
We go really wide and we push the fullbacks a little bit up. And then we have Palina, Pavlovic a little bit down, but most of the teams would come and press you there as well, So the thing is, we drop Musiala. So we push Musiala a little bit deeper, and then he can receive from Neuer. So Neuer is that third center back that creates, the numerical advantage. And it's really hard because you have to push Lewandowski somewhere to, for example, press Upamecano. And then it creates that little bit of a gap in the middle, and Musiala can receive there quite deep. And he can turn and he can receive on the turn. He can go up. He can carry as long as he wants. Is that sort of special players that you can really hardly stop. So this really creates that space for Bayern. And then you have Kane combining with him, and Kane is really good in those situations. And you have Gnabry and Olise running up. So those are the two players that you're going to have to keep on the offside trap. And this is why it's a bit different from most of La Liga teams, because I think then usually it's the striker like we do face as well. So this is how we build up, and this is why it would be interesting to see if exactly you would go for that high line. I think definitely Flick won't change his ideology for one game. That's not something that he will do. We've seen it at Bayern, I've seen him go against big teams, big games, and he never really changes, which I really respect. We played PSG, for example, the second year. We didn't have Lewandowski. We didn't have most of our players. I think half the team was injured. Second leg, and he went for the same ideology and he won the game. So you have to respect that. So yeah, I don't think Flick would change a lot, but yeah, I see things go like this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Flick is a purist in that kind of sense. That he will kind of die by his principles. I will give you some spotlight now. Do you want to share your board? I'll stop the share right here for a bit, and come back to the screen. If you want to share your stuff, I didn't want to take too much of your space because obviously you want to do your Bayern stuff on your own board. But this kind of felt like some of the things there is obviously going to be overlap with what I show on my board and what you show on your board. So yeah, let's see
Yeah.
what you can show us. If we can get the screen share working from the
Well,
so there's
I've
Yeah.
tried to make my board look like yours. I didn't manage to make that. It looks half like yours, but I will show it. And yeah, let's
don't
see.
worry. There is
Just do a screen share,
yeah.
and
So
I will be able
there's
to
a
give you
the
access.
screen share button just under your window.
Yeah, I
next
think I shared my screen.
Yep, I'll give you
No,
access
looks
right
good.
now.
Perfect.
There
Yeah.
you are.
Don't
Yeah,
worry about it.
working.
Yeah,
Nice. Well,
Mhm.
don't look at the defenders because I did it quite fast at the end. But yeah, I think the major problem we have in here. So, for example, here it's Kimmich starting and Guerrero, but we can act like is this Palina and this is Guerrero, Kimmich, for example. So most of the problems we've had this year is when we are going against two forwards, as I've said. So most of the time we are defending quite high. We are defending in these zones and you have two strikers. So it's really hard for most of our players because the goal is that we try to pin you down. We try to have as many players forward because we want to have overlaps. We want to control these zones. But that also leaves a lot of space for these two strikers to, hurt us as much as they can. So most of the teams that we faced and most of the problems that we faced were from long balls from the goalkeeper, from any player, the moment they win the ball. So the moment we try to like combine here, for example, lose the ball, there's a long ball going up from here. That's most of the issues that we faced. And then one of these strikers, by chance, for example, get one lucky ball, and then it's a counter, and it's really hard to defend 1v1 against these runners. And as I said, most of our offside traps did not work as well as we thought. And also we've been, for example, having Upamecano injured. I'm not sure he will start. So this is also a second problem that we're gonna have to face because he is our best center back at the moment. He is the fastest as well. He's the most physical, I would say, as well. And he's the one you want to go against Lewandowski 1v1 because Lewandowski is really smart and really physically strong. So he will receive those balls and he will be smart to like link up quite fast, and you will have him here trying to like score those goals. And if he gets half a chance, he will punish you. Same for Kane, of course. But yeah, we're gonna have to see if like Upamecano will be there. But this is most of our problems. The thing is, Barca don't really play like this, so I wonder if there will be a little bit of changes to try, and adapt and hurt Bayern as much as possible. Like for example, would it be? I don't know. I think someone like Ferran would be quite good here. I don't know if most Barca fans like him, but for me, it would be like that type of player that can hurt you. Is like really fast, quite good,
Yeah, he's injured.
and
He's injured. That's the thing. He's injured for a
okay.
while.
But
Yeah.
then Rafinha as well. But yeah,
Injured.
you want one of those players who's fast, who's physically strong, who can attack the space when Lewandowski will get that one chance here to link up. But also you have Lamine, and then you have like really good players all over the pitch. I think for us the idea would be that we don't defend, we don't attack this high. I don't know how we can do that, but I think it's a game where both teams would try to have like a certain advantage over the other, and no one would really get that full advantage for the whole game. So the idea for us would be to be really strong in the build up, that we don't lose the balls, and that we try as much as possible to hurt you when possible, when we have the chance. So I think the build up we will be easier for us because I don't expect you to be one of those teams that would just give us a lot of space to like I don't know, like for example, you won't go against us, I don't know, man to man all over the pitch with the same intensity because you really don't want to leave space. I think Barca would try to win the ball to hurt you as well, so you would try to position players in that regard. And for us, I think it would be a little bit easier than it was against Aston Villa. Aston Villa was quite hard for us to, like play our game, and then I'm not sure, but I think that yeah, Barca would give us a little bit more chance to be, faster in the build up and to be in those positions that we want to because going to be open, but same for you. So So yeah, the way I see the game, it would be quite close. I think that from Barca's side, it would be a really good challenge because, as you said, there is the physicality as well for Bayern. Bit stronger team, bit more attacking team than most La Liga teams, and also quite fast than most of La Liga teams. I mean, we faced them, and I see how they play most of them. So it's a very different approach, but yeah, I really don't know what else I can. I don't know if you have questions, but that's the way I see it so far.
That is a good point. So at this moment, why don't we see if we have any questions? People have been very patient. They've been listening, mesmerized, I think, to all the amazing stuff you guys are doing on the screen. But yeah, guys, who are there are about 2,000 of all of you who have joined. That's insane. Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it, both to Barca fans and Bayern fans. But if you have questions, you can put it up. What we will do is we will cut back to some data and we'll go through the data. And if you have questions, we'll cut back and answer the questions as well, right? Okay, with that, without further ado, this is some of the data. So I looked into just the current stats, how the teams are performing right now, the last 5 games in league and Champions League all taken together, and wanted to see like where do they stand as of this moment. Correct. So this is just, both teams, obviously, Dom and Augustus talked a lot about how both teams defend and attack. Now, this is how they have won the defensive duels in their own third, which is when they are under attack. The 4 things that come to my mind, and I will leave it to Dom and Augustus to go into further details. One is Bayern's obviously high pressure defense, right? You can check out that it's spread across, right? They also have a lot of advanced positions, yeah, to counter to counter the press, to counter the attack that is there. And Barca can utilize this because you can see the number of spaces that are in between, and Barca has pocket players, as Dom talked about, like Pedri, like Olmo, who can go for those quick and they can thereby bridge the line. That's one. Barca, however, are vulnerable in the wide areas. So if you can see interception data and the defensive duel that has happened, they're not the best. And Bayern has very good. So in Olise and in Davies, you will have people coming down the flanks all the time. Then there's Sane as well. Musiala can also be pretty hard to contend with. So on the wide areas, Barca will be challenged, especially I think so. Where we have Balde. I think Kunde can manage a little bit better, but I think on Balde's side, there will be challenges. Bayern, however, also seem to have a little bit of a more of a difficulty within the box if you just go by the interception and the data. So the number of interceptions in the box are not that much. So if you can get into the box, Bayern has conceded based on data in the last 5 games. Doesn't mean that they will, but considerably that is what has happened. Now, again, we have seen the games, Rafinha playing as a hybrid 10, or Pedri, doing that interception very high up the pitch, which we have seen. That's his new thing that he is doing. He's really winning balls high up the pitch in the opponent third. There's an opportunity for us to score goals. And then finally, the interception strategy, right? So if you think like under Flick, Barca's interception has been much more zonal. You have players in zones who do their pressing consistently for 90 minutes, but they don't run as much as they used to when Xavi was the coach. And their interception philosophy is very much high up the pitch. So you have players like Rafinha, you have players like Olmo, you have players like Pedri who are doing a lot of interceptions, quick interplays, and then just turning the counter, right? So if these are the two players based on this data, right? And if these are like 3 or 4 thoughts that initially come to my mind, guys, any thoughts from you?
It's just the difference between the duels they mentioned, Dev. That's to me like Barca. They have to contend with the wide threat. That's always going to be there, and they have improved somewhat in controlling the middle third of the pitch. That's why we have less duels there in general. Most of the teams will attack Barca out wide because that's where the space is always going to be, right behind their fullbacks, behind the wingers when we do attack aggressively, and then you have to kind of contend with that. And you said Balde it's a tricky one because on paper he's such a profile that can actually could be the athletic part, that could be the very defensive-minded player that you need him to be. But then he has struggled recently in both his timings, the reading of the game, just knowing when to drop and how to follow his marker. He's not, so to speak, using his head as much. He's relying on his legs, which is something that Davis has done as well. If I'm not wrong, Gustas, he kind of relies on his ability to track back and use that speed, use that physicality to actually compensate for maybe a lack of timing, or maybe just thinking the actions through. So Bayern can definitely exploit that, because they do have Olise, they do have Nabri, they do have Musiala and Kane, who will drop deeper, interchange positions, and do all these shenanigans in possessions, and it will be very tricky for Barca to contain that. On the other hand, you do have Bayern, who do seem to have more duels centrally than wide, which is very interesting. So, and this is where Barca do accumulate most of their firepower. They do. Yeah, so they will have Lamine coming in, they will have Rafinha coming in, they will have Olmo pushing up, Pedri pushing up, obviously Lewandowski combining those areas as well. So if Bayern can contain that middle channel, that central channel, that becomes a problem for Barca, because that's where most of their firepower will come through. Augustus, your thoughts here?
Well, I think it's quite interesting to look at the Barca side, because you see a lot more, for example, interception in the box from the right side, and a lot more defensive duels. I think that's quite something interesting. On the Bayern side, it doesn't really shock me. So if you see it, it looks a little bit like this, and that's how most of the teams, attack us. Like, it's gonna be a ball to the right next to the Upamecano, and then they try to like find space behind Kim, or like find a runner there. So it's really a little bit like exactly what you expect. So what we see here, I think it's quite interesting from both sides. We see a lot of like defensive duels, because these are teams that definitely go, and pin you down. So it's going to be like a long ball, and then it's going to be a runner. So a defensive duel, very little interception, because a lot of teams won't get, to have the possession in your own third most of the time. So slide and tackles, interception won't be that much. But it's quite interesting to look at the Barca side and see that little zone, in the box, and see that there's a lot more interceptions there than defensive duels. I think for Bayern, that's interesting. From our side, what I really don't like is around the box. I think that's a space where usually when we're pinned down, or when we have those little time zones, around the box is you have Lewandowski, who's really good, you have Rafinha, who's really good, you have Olmo, who's been already punishing us throughout the years from that zone. So like this last year, I think with Olmo during the Super Cup, like he was absolutely unstoppable against Bayern. So he's one of the players that you want to to defend. That's also why I wanted to have Palina this game, because that's the zone I want to defend better, because I know that Barca would have a lot more power and would have a lot more ability to like pin us down for a longer periods of time than most of the teams could. So it would be interesting to how we defend that zone, but also on the right side, because on the right side we've been having a lot of issues, whether it's Guerrero, whether it's Leimer. We so far didn't have a good right back to use for games. So we don't even know who would be starting there. Is it Kimmich? Is it, for example, Sasha Boye, who's been kind of like getting back to shape lately? But this is how I see this, and I think it's quite interesting to look at this defensive duels and how both teams like try to win the ball back.
All right, so let's look into long lost duels into the on third, right? So and that is also quite interesting, because if you look into Bayern's right flank, and just now Augustus talked about it, right? There is a bit of a lost duels on the right side of the defense, and Barca probably will look to exploit that, because if we are seeing this, you can damn right be sure Fancy Flick has already seen this. Barcelona's central defense, and Dom talked about it, right? So if you look at Barca's central defense lines, right, we are mostly contending from the flanks, but in the center, if you push it through, and we'll be contending against the likes of Harry Kane, not going to be easy, right? Again, both teams have been scoring from set pieces, but Barca more so from corners than from actually free kicks. Bayern has actually done well from free kicks, and if there are chances that come on that edge of that penalty area or that zone 14 area, I think there are chances there, because we don't have a very tall center back to contend with right now. Christensen's out, Araujo's out, and mostly Inigo and Kubarsi are ball playing defenders, and so on and so forth. So I think fundamentally, those are some of the keys to the game that each coach would be looking into. Obviously, both teams play a very high line, so I won't be surprised if long balls and second balls are used in a very thoughtful manner to just beat that press and take that initiative. And later, somewhere in the data, I would show you Bayern in the first 15 minutes have scored so many goals that you got to be careful in those first 15 minutes that you don't lose that advantage, because the data clearly shows that. But before I pass it on, guys, quick thoughts from you before we take an actual question.
Yeah, that's kind of the, I didn't know that the scoring the goals in the opening minutes. That's very interesting, because that kind of snuffs out all the momentum, and Barca need to be very careful not to go into this tennis match with Bayern, because if it comes down to outscoring Bayern but also conceding goals, I'm not sure how we'll handle that. We saw it against Villarreal. We were very good at kind of taking the momentum away from them and then putting it back into our favor, kind of calming down the game, resetting the game, and then we pile on and then we score goals. Against Alaves, we could afford to go into a tennis match because our quality was so overwhelming that we could just afford that, because man for man we were worlds apart in quality, right? Against Bayern, if we do the same thing, I don't like our chances, because I don't want to see a tennis match here. I don't want to see just them attacking us all the time and we attacking them all the time. I just don't feel comfortable in that kind of a game. But then, do we have the quality to kind of calm down the game and pin down Bayern? That's also it's difficult either way. But if we concede very early and if we kind of mentally collapse, that's game over against a team like Bayern. So that'll be very tough to do.
Well, the same thing for me, like I think that's very true. I mean, we've seen it against Aston Villa, we've seen it against Frankfurt. Even the games where we didn't really play as well as most of the fans think, we were really good in the first 15 minutes, and mainly from the zone where you see a little bit on your left side, basically the left half space where Kimmich likes to operate. He's really good from there. He really has like perfect inch passes, like to Kane, etc. We've seen it against Aston Villa. I think he delivered like 4 or 5 passes in the first 15 minutes that should have been goals, should have been like led to at least a goal scoring chances. So he's really good there. I think that Flick knows him really well as well, to know how to, like operate against him in the first 15 minutes. I think there will definitely be a few players on him and try to, like not give him as much space as he would like to have. So I don't see the first 15 minutes as easy as that for Bayern as well. I think it would be quite like tactical from both sides. Both teams would try to like stop the other players as much as possible, not give them as much space as they would like. The thing is, it could happen that there is a goal scored in those minutes. Could be that Barca, on a counter. It could be that it's Bayern. But the way I see it, most coaches would try to calm down things at first, because you don't want a tennis ball, you want tennis match, you don't want to the games to go like out of control. You want to keep control, you want to operate and punish the teams the way you would like to play, and not be forced to play on the counter or like be too pinned down. So I think both sides would be quite careful with the way they play. We would see a lot more calm in position, because Barca is not Aston Villa and Barca is not Frankfurt, and vice versa. So I think Bayern would be a little bit calmer, but there would be a lot of energy from both sides for sure.
All right, let's keep going on a couple of other things. I'll keep the crosses aside. I'll look into this one, because this one I found it a little bit interesting in terms of how the teams are using dribbles, right? Because we have such a technically competent players, but you see Bayern, and I was surprised, but Bayern has a lot more successful dribbles in the final third compared to Barca. Probably it's the likes of Musiala and so on and so forth. And possibly they're going to take the chances on that, number one, right? And then if you look into wide play versus central penetration, again, Bayern's is across the pitch. You can see it. Whereas Barca's are a little bit more central, because that's where you have Olmo, that's where you have Rafinha as that hybrid 10 that we are playing. So they're going to use their width, and we are going through the center and so on. So we talked about it. But again, Bayern's dribbles have actually created goals. Ours haven't. We have a team structure. We have a more interpassing kind of a strategy towards getting to that goal. And we have been very successful with that. But fundamentally, it feels like that. But that also tells that if you can contend with those players, which would be, I think, Olise, which would be, I think, Musiala, Kane, and Muller, and Gnabry. These are the 5 players which I would say will be really, really the ones who will define or dictate the match. If you can contend with them in a zonal way, there are chances of nullifying some of that Bayern attack. And then, that's basically what my thinking is. But
Yeah, it's for Barca. It's
Nice.
there's not many because you don't have players like that. You have Lamine who can create off of a dribble, but other than Lamine, there's no one really. I mean, Rafinha can hurt you, absolutely can, but he's not a tricky dribbler. He's not someone who's very agile, who turns in all directions. He's not like that, right? He will cut inside, he will use his ball striking, and then he will shoot and he will score goals, right? He uses his movement more so than he uses dribbling, right, and agility, if that makes sense. So you only have Lamine who does that. On the other hand, Bayern, I think they have more tools in that regard. So it'll be very interesting how Koundé and how Balde actually deal with that wide threat, because Olise will probably kind of cut in and be more of a half space threat. So do our players kind of follow him there? Do they stick to him? Do they man mark him? The same thing with Nabri and obviously with Kane, because Kane will drop deeper. He will do that. He likes that. So do we follow him but then leave space behind, and Musiala can kind of come in and you can hurt you? There's so many ways that Bayern can actually hurt you, and they put you in so many decisional crises that you have to decide on the spot. Do I go with the marker? Do I stay back? If I go with him, I leave space behind. If I stay, I leave him in space when he drops deeper. So it's a very, very difficult situation to be in, and I'm wondering how does Flick actually counteract that, because he will try and come up with a plan, because we do have young players in there. We have Kubarsi, who's obviously very great, and he's been very crucial in our Champions League bouts and so on and so forth. But he's also young, right? He can be maybe overexcited. He maybe a drop in concentration. All that stuff can happen to young players. So very interesting how we deal with that. But on the face of it, yeah, Bayern do have better dribblers, I would say. Augustus?
Yeah, well, I totally agree. I think that it's quite clear. One of the things that I've been noticing lately when I look at the data is also quite clearly shown here, is that Bayern attacks from all the sides. So you're gonna have to defend on the left side, you're gonna have to defend centrally, you're gonna have to defend on the right side. It's quite similar. I think there is a little bit less on the left side, even though here we see a lot more dribbles. But most of the attacks come from the right and the central, but not that much difference with the left side. So this is a side that, and I really like this, that attacks from everywhere, that tries to score from everywhere. We've seen long shots, we've seen like combinations, we've seen like long switches. So most of the time we try to like outnumber you on one of the sides and then play a long switch to Gnabry, etc. But that also really shows here, and I think that really helps in terms of like dribbling, because the moment we are outnumbering you have two options, either to pass or to dribble. It's quite hard to defend against that. So it really helps our like wingers, especially Olise and Gnabry, because they can cut on the rights, on their foot, because they are inverted wingers, and they can also pass to one of the overlapping fullbacks. So it gives you two options, and it really makes it a bit easier for you. But I think the most interesting thing here is that if you look at Kane and Lewandowski, their dribbles both came at the same zones, so very deep in the back. So those are like the zones that these strikers would try to like hurt you with. But also, if you look at us, we have Musiala basically used everywhere, and I think that really is important. That's why I think he's one of the players that if he's not there, we really struggle. We've seen it like against Frankfurt. So for me, it's probably the most important player right now at Bayern, and this really shows that. So we try to open space as much as possible with dribbles. I think for Barca it's a little bit different, but these are two sides that can hurt you, and Lamine alone is quite a threat in that regard. So for sure.
Absolutely. Let's keep going on to some other interesting stuff. This is recovery, so it talks about the press, but we have talked about the press, so I'm going to skip this one for now in interest of time. But I did want to talk about this one, and this shows you how the teams actually play on average, the momentum of the game. So look at Bayern on the left, 16 in the first, 1 to 15. And then you can see immediately after the break. So when they come in, right, whether it's at the beginning of the game or after the break, they are at full tilt. They're literally going at full tilt at you, right? For Barca, you can see the first ones, they're a little bit circumspect, correct? And with this Bayern, if you're circumspect, it means that you are under waves of attack for the first 15 minutes, and where anything can happen. And then they see them. They're like kind of, they settle down, they do their own thing. And we do have a penchant of scoring a lot of goals just after the break, or in that 50 to 70, 75 minutes, where we are either, outscoring you or catching up with you, what have you. So we do take chance of the tired legs. And I do want to preface this with the fact that, Dom talked about the fact that probably it is going to be Pedri and Casado who's going to start up. But I do think Flick is going to bring in Gavi and Frankie sometime or the other into the mix. Now, at what time they're going to bring in, because that's going to have a huge impact because of the kind of players they are and what they do on the pitch and how they play. So, any thoughts from you guys, gentlemen, in like based on this? And you can see the attacks. You can see the shot selection very central for Barca, probably a little bit more from the right because of the way of the threat that Lamine Yamal carries, and generally Olmo cuts in and then he will support because he's mostly uses his right feet. So you can see more of the threat on the right hand side than on the left. But for Bayern, it's more or less, you can see the variation and the intensity.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because you can see how Barca kind of wear you down. That was a good point, Dev. They kind of slowly wear you down. They play the long game, the possession game. They kind of tire you out and then they absolutely destroy you. That's what they do. Whereas Bayern will attack in waves. They will just come at you, then maybe slow down, then come at you again. It's very, very non-stop for both teams once it picks up eventually. And yes, Bayern, I mean, look at that shot map. It's all in the central areas, all in the golden zones. This is where the biggest chances happen. And Barca, they can struggle there. They can struggle containing those zones, especially with the lack of physicality and aerial dominance for Barcelona. So if you can hurt Barca aerially, that would be the thing to do. Now, I don't know if it's going to be Peña or Szczesny, but that will make a world of difference as well, because Peña can be so insecure with collecting those balls and just punching those balls out of those central areas. So it'll be interesting to see how we do that. And yes, of course, you have most threat coming from Lamine and then obviously Lewandowski, whereas Bayern are just all over the place. They can hurt you from so many angles, from so many different players. And we do need to be on top of our game defensively, because we have struggled so far, even though we have not conceded so many goals, we have conceded chances. And I think if you give chances to Bayern, they will score. Simple as that. So it'll be very interesting to see that.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going a little bit on the key passes. And here I wanted to talk to Augustus.
If I can just say one thing about the previous one, I think that would be if we can go back to the previous one.
I'll go back.
Like one thing that I really liked about Unai Emery's approach against Bayern is that he's someone who really tried to exploit exactly this. And the first 15 minutes, he knew he would suffer as much as he could. He tried not to concede, and he was a little bit lucky, in terms of not conceding. And then he tried to gain confidence, and we could see him on the bench trying to push his players a little bit more during the 16 to 30 minutes. Then he conceded again, and it was really going the same way. But what I really liked is that during the 61 to 75 minutes, he knew that Bayern would drop intensity, and that's when he brought in Duran, and Duran 9 minutes later he scored. So that's a coach who really tried to exploit this, and that would be quite interesting to look at against Barca, because I see it during the 61 to 75 minutes. That's where you peak. That's where you are at your strongest. So it would be really interesting to see how we try and approach that momentum during the game, because we do have a lot of intensity during the first 15 minutes, and then during the second half, the first 10 to 15 minutes again. So I think it would be more important against Barca to calm down during the second half and not try to have a little bit similar momentum, so that we try and adapt to you and not try to be intensive from the first 15 minutes again and again, because then you might get punished quite fast after.
Okay, so Barca fans, be prepared for a very nervous, very tactically biting, sitting on your ass, on your chair and just waiting for those first 15 minutes to get over, because it will be tough. We're going to face a lot of attacks coming our way. All right, let's look into the passes. And here, Augustus, I wanted to first go to you. Looks like Muller is still important at 25. He's number 25 this time around. And Muller is somebody Hansi Flick will know pretty well. But if you look into the number of assists, the number of things in this team, seems like a pretty interesting, point of reference, along with 17. I think that's Olise plus Gnabry. So if there are ways to contend with them or cut off their passing lines, which Flick has done in La Liga with certain other teams, right, using a bunch of players, that should nullify some of their ability. So as to say, if you look at just the efficacy of some of the passes and what's happening, Barca obviously is on the right hand side. But I'll start with you and then go to Tom.
Yeah, just to recap the question. So it's basically how you can nullify Bayern's side, if I understood.
Yeah. What should we do?
Yeah. Well, I think I think nullifying a team and during one of these games is just not a good like approach to go with, because the same for Bayern. I don't think we can nullify Barca. I think you have to accept the fact that they will have chances and you will have chances. It's about how the quality of those chances. So it would be like how to lower this possibility of Bayern having really good chances in those moments. So one of the things that we will a lot of the time see is that it would be Olise trying to cut in. It would be like Lamer or Guerrero trying to like overlap, or Kimmich, and Bayern would try to like outnumber you on that right side. So you would have Kimmich come in there, you would have Olise, you would have Kane, you would have Musiala, you would have like one of the right backs overlapping. So it would be really hard to like contain us there. But it would be important that you have one of the center backs a little bit deeper and have two midfielders come there and try to like lock in the space as much as possible. But also on the other side, I don't know who would be your right back, but it will be quite difficult to like keep up with Gnabry, because that's also where Brian tried to like play those long balls to Gnabry, have space, have Kane. So I think that if Bayern is in an attacking position in numbers, it's very hard to defend against them. Like most of the teams that we've seen, like Frankfurt, I think their midfielder came out after like 45 minutes. Even if they did really good game, it was on the ball, it was not really that good, and you could see it. Same for Aston Villa. So I think it's very, very hard to defend against Bayern. But at the same time, if you win the balls during those places, in those zones, so I'm talking about, the right back zone or the left back zone, if you win the ball there, it's really dangerous to like go and counter Bayern. Bayern really struggles against that because we are attacking in numbers. So we leave a lot of space in the midfield, and you have Pedri, you have players who are really good at, like finding the little bit gaps of space and pockets and go on the counter. So Bayern would have to be a lot more, I think, like a little bit less attacking in their approach. So that would probably help Barca defend us better. But yeah, I don't think there is a possibility for both sides to nullify the other. I think both sides will have a lot of chances, especially during the first 45 minutes. And then, if you take the upper hand, it might be easier to, like gain momentum and compete throughout the game. But yeah, it would be hard for us as well to stop you, because it's just impossible as well on the other side to
All right.
nullify Barca.
In the interest of time, Dom, I'm going to take into a couple of other places where I think this one, I wanted to have your point of view, Dom. So I just analyzed the dribbling stat map, right? And you can see Bayern's on that final third across the pitch, right?
Yeah.
And you can see, where Barca kind of, it's obviously Lamine heavy, as one would expect. Correct. But looking at this, what do you think the coaches will be thinking of how to set up?
It's very difficult, yeah. But I mean, you do have a Lamine heavy right side, obviously. That's where our dribbles come from. But also, we saw against Alaves, they tried to mark Lamine out of the game, and they succeeded. They kind of did stop the ball coming to Lamine all the time. They double teamed them, but then Barca had so much space in other areas, they completely dismantled them in that regard. So we do see that even though Barca's attack is very Lamine sided, very Lamine heavy, if you do leave Lewandowski open, if you do leave Rafinha open, especially with Olmo coming back, you will be in the world of trouble, right? Because that's where the rest of the firepower comes in. It is Lamine, obviously, at the very top, but then Barca are also, even though the numbers don't show it necessarily, but yes, Barca also have different ways of hurting you. And for Bayern, it's very straightforward. Look at those numbers. They are very high across the final third, across all three possessions, and that's where their power comes from. Now, how can Flick actually stop that? I mean, one way is to stop the ball at the source. That's what Barca normally try and do, because if you do get into these 1-versus-1 situations, you will likely lose against Bayern on pure quality alone. So what we tend to do is we try and stop that from happening with offside traps, with our high pressing.
Also, the midfield. You see the number of dribbles that we have in the midfield at Famo. So we'll try probably to contain that before it goes to that one.
Exactly. You have to stop it before it actually develops. And that's kind of the high risk, high reward, because if you do succeed, that's great. I mean, you stop the ball at the source, you stop Kimmich from distributing the ball, you stop these players from actually starting the attacks. But if you fail, and if that counter press or press is bypassed, you have so much quality from Bayern, you have so much space from Barca that's left behind, that it could be very detrimental in your approach. So it's interesting to see, is Flick going to be this purist type coach and stick by his guns, which I think he will. He historically has done so in the past, but then it could go either way. I mean, we talked about this, Dev. In every game that Barca has won, there were moments in which you were like, oh my God, what's happening? Because the opposition get the space, they get the chances, and so far we have been both lucky but also skillful, because we've managed to stop those chances from going into goals. But at the same time, we have not faced a team of Bayern's quality who, if they get those chances, more than likely they will bury them.
All right, guys, we've been talking for a long time, okay, and
Yeah,
enough
I know.
about our data and stuff. So just let's talk about like fans, okay?
Uh,
All right, score prediction time, guys. I know it's the stupidest thing to do, but
uh,
let's try doing that anyway. Dom, what are you going with?
would you go to me first? Okay, like let me think. Okay, let me think. I think there will be goals. There will be goals first and foremost. You can't escape. Yes, this game can be very strategical, very tactical in the beginning, but when it comes down to it, these teams want to dominate. They want to score goals. I want to go for a Barca victory. I want to go for Barca. Can we score 3 goals? I think we can. Three, three, 3-2 or 3-1. I don't know. I'm hovering between those two. I'm gonna see 5 games in the Champions League game. I think it's gonna be a calculated game, right? Okay, but if it goes out of control and both teams end up scoring lots of goals, I could see Barca kind of edging them in a 3-2 win, but it could go either way. It could be Bayern 3 goals easily. But then so it's a very ungrateful thing to kind of predict these things. I'm going to go with the Barca win. I don't know about the scoreline. I'm sure Augustus will say Bayern win 3-1 or 3-0 or something like that. But yeah, I don't know, guys.
All right, Augustus, 3-2 from Dom.
I think same for me. Like I can't say Bayern losing. I can't see Bayern losing. So I would say, like a small win. But I always have a struggle with this because I'm just such a Bayern fan as well. So I'm biased, and I would say from my side maybe a 4-2 for Bayern.
4-2 from Bayern. I am pessimistic. Dom knows that.
Yeah.
So my first thing is I'm super afraid of that offside trap failing, because I've been afraid all season long. And if that fails, it can get pretty ugly pretty fast. But that said, I'm going to be a little bit more cautious and positive about it. So my very practical side says it will be a 3-2 Bayern. That's what I think, because this team is still young. It's Barca are still playing with a bunch of kids. Bayern still has like a stacked team of real international players who have played tons of Champions League games and what have you. So expecting this team full of kids, they're already punching way out their weight right now. And I think they will score goals. I do think that will happen. And yes, with Flick on the dugout, you always have a chance because he knows the system, he knows the team. He's brought some of that mentality along with him. So yeah, there can be something, but my practical side says that it will be 3-2 Bayern. But as a Barca fan, I will obviously want us to win. So I will look for a 3-2 or a 3-1 kind of play. But that's it. Okay, who would be the keys of the teams, guys? Or let's start with Augustus. Who are the players from Barca that you are wary of?
For me, Lewandowski, first of all, because I really like that player. I like his quality. I think he's one of the best strikers I've ever seen. So it's someone that I really appreciate, that I highly respect. So Lewandowski is always there, always in the list. I think Olmo is someone who can really hurt us. He's a player who knows how to play against us, who knows our players, and who knows how to operate in those zones where we usually get hurt. So I think that Olmo is definitely up there. Lamine Yamal is obviously up there as well. So I think this trio is the most dangerous. But I won't be the one to, like, for me, Pedri is up top. So in terms of midfield battles, he will be one of the ones that we have to like pin down. We have to like really control as much as possible. So I would say maybe these 4 players. Yeah.
Dom, who are the Bayern players you are scared of, or not scared of? You're wary of.
Yeah, I know. It's difficult. Musiala, obviously, Kane, obviously, Elisa. But you could go on. There's so much quality in that overall team, not just the attackers, but midfielders, the defenders as well. I think, Musiala up there, Kane up there, Olisa up there, then Gnabry up there. Maybe those 4. But then you also have Kimmich, who's going to be obviously key in the build-up and distribution, all of that stuff. And Neuer as well, how they use Neuer in their build-up as well. It's just as a third centre-back kind of thing, because Barca have not faced that many teams who play that way in La Liga, right? They don't have that experience. So how do we handle when there's an opposition goalkeeper with such quality, with that structure in front of them? How do we manage that? So there's so many things that actually scare me. Well, that I'm wary of. Let's put it that way. Yeah, I'm not necessarily scared, but yeah. So it will be a tough thing to predict. Obviously, those four players plus Kimmich, I think that's the way to go. How about you, Dev? What do you think will be the most difficult part of this game?
Yeah, I mean, like I agree with you. I think Muller somehow becomes a different person. There are players who play extremely well against us, like
Yeah,
Larry Aspas or Brian
yeah,
Zaragoza, right? Muller becomes somebody else when it's FC Barcelona. Muller's still
Mm,
there, right? So I think Muller always
yeah,
Musiala, because he's a great player. Like, you can't dislike Musiala when you just watch him play. It's outstanding. I
mm,
think Olise has fit in very well. Nabri hurt us the last two times quite badly. We couldn't contend with his pace. We couldn't contend with his position playing between the lines.
yeah,
So they have, and Harry Kane, like like he's going to be hard. He's like another Lewandowski. That's what he is. Like, literally,
yeah,
he's a hitman, right? And we don't really, with Araujo, I would have been a lot more comfortable managing Harry Kane. But with Kubarsi, he's great on the ground, but Kubarsi is not good in the air. And Harry Kane's the beast. He's absolutely a beast. So there's going to be challenges from those guys in terms of when they are on the offensive. I do, however, think in the midfield, I think at this moment, with Pedri playing the way he is, with Casado becoming as better as he has, I think midfield we actually do have a little bit of an advantage right now. It changes obviously, and I will be very curious to see at what stage a Gavi or a Frankie make their entrance or what have you, because I'm pretty sure they're going to be used. What time, I don't
mhm.
know, but they're going to be used. So that can change things. And I think Olmo, like Augustus pointed out, he's used to playing against Bayern. There's a thing, like lots of teams are scared playing Real Madrid. Barca are never scared playing Real Madrid because they play them all the time, and they can actually win against them because they're used that mentality thing. It works actually. So Olmo knows how to play against them, and he has that pocket playing ability, and that's how we've been scoring goals and so on and so forth. So yeah, that can possibly work out, and that can be one of those things. But it's going to be super hard. My biggest fear is in those first 15 to 35 minutes, if we miss that offside trap and we concede
Mhm.
two on the counter, that's the end of the game. We can't
Yeah.
recover from that, and that can very well happen. We've been very lucky that it hasn't happened till now. So that would be
yeah.
my take on that. But okay, if that's that, let's see. There are not many questions, honestly. There are about 3,000 people. So 3,000 people joined. That's insane, guys. Thank you. You're not that good, but it's so good to have so many of you to listen to us. That just makes us feel so much better. All right, so that's any other final thoughts from you guys before we actually wrap it up? It's been about, we've been going at it for 90
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah, we've been rambling for a lot, and thank you everyone. I mean, to have 3,000 people just sitting there and watching us for an hour and a half, just yapping about the game that's still 2 weeks away, that's massive. And thank you so much. Make sure to follow Augustus. Make sure to follow Barca Football. We have channels across YouTube, podcast and Spotify. We do have a blog. We do have a lot of things, and we'll be covering Bayern more in the upcoming weeks as we get closer to that game in particular. So make sure to follow, well, all of us here if you can. Your support is always greatly appreciated. And Augustus, just a big thank you to you as well,
Big,
having you
big
here
thank you.
with us. Yeah, just discussing this and taking an hour and a half of your day on a Saturday is massive, because that's the time we get off football sometimes, especially when it's international break. So having you here and sacrificing your time for us, it means the world. And we hope to have you back maybe after the Bayern game. We can do a review, maybe live or maybe recorded it. We'll see. We'll see how you guys, the supporters, have liked this, because it's been a long one. It always is with the lives, but you do stick with us for the whole duration of the live, which is incredible. I mean, to have that attention span so long and to sit there and listen to us is incredible. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Augustus, once again, thank you so much.
Augustus, anything from you to your fans, because a lot of them signed up.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for the invitation. It was really great. I mean, I've done a lot of podcasts, but this one was really one of the best I've done. And that speaks for your work. I think you've been quite prepared from all the sides, and it's been really quite, I don't know, a journey to just enjoy talking to you. It's been quite fun to just discussing this. And I'm happy to give 1 hour and 32 hours just football, and just really nice to talk to you. And thank you to everyone who's been watching us. It's been, I mean, amazing to have 3,000 people just listening to us, and just us talking football stuff, especially that we're not even sure. That's what I love about this game, is that we're talking about a game where no one is really sure what is going to happen. We're not there yet. It's not that easy to like predict this type of game. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Thank you guys for the invitation, and everyone who's listening, make sure you follow these guys because their work is amazing. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to be with you guys.
The videos are out there on Twitch, on YouTube, and on X. It's there on all of our profiles. You can watch them there. Criticize, come back with thoughts, tell us how we can be better, right? That's all what this is all about. We make a lot of mistakes, and we know that, right? And we are sometimes too negative. I've heard you, so it's trying to be more positive as we go along, but we are just too practical. I'm way too practical. So yeah, that becomes a challenge. But that said, thank you for joining. We hope after we can turn the deficit this time around. We have had not the best of times against Bayern, and as a Barca fan, it will be good for all the Barca fans to at least win one game, right? And in a better manner, right? So we hope that happens, and it's not a repeat of what we have seen in the last 3-4 years, but it's a tough game with Bayern. With that said, Bayern fans, thank you so much for joining. You have an amazing team, and may you guys win everything that is there to be won this season. That's all I can say from my side. That said, as we always say, stay safe, take care, and as we say, Visca el Barça.